point in the book where her mother has passed away. Her bulimia is raging so badly that she's throwing her literal teeth up. Her boyfriend has been diagnosed with schizophrenia and thinks he's Jesus Christ. Her father comes to her and says, "Hi, I just wanted to let you know I'm dating your mom's best friend, but she wants me to tell you that I'm not actually your real dad." Hello, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is Cheer Denise. So today we're going to do a recap of Jennette McCurdy's book, I'm Glad My Mother Died. And I'm really enjoying doing this with you guys, where instead of reading a full memoir word for word and page for page, we end up doing a recap and a story time of that book. And I think that kind of works out better so that we can still talk about books, but we aren't stuck on a certain book for sometimes 2 months long, especially when that book isn't particularly good. However, of all the books I've done a recap of up until now, this book is one that I wish I had chosen to read for the channel because it is very, very funny. She has a very dark sense of humor, which I think most of us who have had traumatic childhoods or very difficult things happen to us develop a dark sense of humor. And as somebody who really thinks that that's a hilarious form of writing, I enjoyed the book a lot. Now, I dragged my feet on reading this book for a couple of reasons. The first is that Jennette McCurdy was a little after my time. I'd aged out of Nickelodeon television by the time she was on TV. So because her acting career is no longer current, she wasn't an actress that I knew anything about. And so sometimes it's easier to find the stories of celebrities interesting if you have a personal appreciation for their work. But then the other reason was I didn't really like the title of the book. And it isn't because I minded that the book was about her abusive mother or even that the book's title was edgy. It's because I was like, it's clickbaity. It wants me to read it. And so I'm not going to. That's so dumb because by the time I finished the book, I thought, what else would she have called this book? Truly, what else? And what's really interesting about the book is I expected the book to be a lot heavier on her general disdain for her mom from the beginning. But the reality is that up until the very end, she loves her mother and really cannot figure out life without her mother's opinion on what she does. And it wasn't until her mother died that there was any sense of freedom for her to live her life. But even after her mother died, it's her mother's voice and impression of life and what she should or shouldn't be doing was heavy on her heart all the time. And so truly, I don't know who she would have been had her mother lived. So of course she's glad her mother died. And had I read the book instead of just judging it by its cover, as we're told not to do, I might have known this. But instead I had to be like, I don't know, that's clickbaity, I don't like it. Cheer, please. Okay, so let's jump right into this. The story is astounding. Like there were times when she's telling the story that it is so chaotic and so crazy and so many terrible things are happening at once that I found myself laughing, not because I was happy or entertained necessarily by all of the horrible things that were happening to her, but like out of utter sheer disbelief. Like, how could this be anybody's life? It was so crazy. So the book starts out with her and her family living in a very small house that they can't afford to live in and wouldn't live in there unless they had been renting it from her father's parents. They are always late on their rent. In order to make ends meet, they have their grandparents living with them. But there's another reason why her grandparents live with them in this very tiny, cramped, cluttered, very dysfunctional household. And it's because when Jennette is 2 years old, her mother is diagnosed with cancer. And it becomes this horrifying, traumatic episode for the family where they think she's going to die. But she pulls through. And the fear that her mother will get cancer again defines everything in the household. It always feels from then on that there's this cloud over the family that the mom's going to relapse, get cancer again, and she'll die. And she doesn't let any of them forget that she was on death's door for a good amount of time. And every single Sunday, she has the children sit down and they rewatch a home video where she's singing to them and trying to make memories with them because she might die. Well, she lives, but she still loves the high drama of reminding the family that she almost died. And every time they watch the video together at home on Sunday afternoon, she has the same commentary about what each of the children are doing in response to the suffering of their mother. And one of the brothers, named Marcus, was so upset by his mother's sickness that he gets up and walks out of the room because he can't handle the heaviness of his sick mother. Whereas Jeanette, who's only 2, is singing some songs, and it doesn't seem bothered by the fact that her mother has cancer. And every single time they watch the video, Jeanette's mother points out Jeanette's cheerful attitude and wants to discuss what an inappropriate reaction that was to her mother's suffering. How could the 2-year-old be singing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star when her mother is dying of cancer? So this has to always be put on Jeanette as being somebody who was unable to emotionally read a room and act accordingly. And that pressure that her mother places on her every Sunday afternoon becomes something that she decides to defy. And now she's going to make sure that she's always able to read her mother forever from that point on, because she feels so ashamed at not appropriately reacting. Marcus knew. Marcus, her brother, got up and walked out of the room. So heavy did he find his mother's sickness. But she sat there and sang a song about Twinkle Twinkle Little Star when her mother was suffering. And so from that point on, she makes it her sole job to read her mother's emotions and react accordingly. And her entire life is based on making sure that her mother is always emotionally able and well and stable. And that becomes her whole thing. Is Mama doing okay? You know, did I say something? Did I look some way? Did I react the wrong way? I need to always temper the way I'm behaving so that my mom is okay. And her mother had high demands on her all the time, because what's going to become alarmingly clear in this book is that the mom has explosive rage, completely emotionally incapable of reacting to situations at an appropriate level. She shames people, she's controlling, she's manipulative, and the whole house walks on eggshells because no one's really sure how she's going to react. Simultaneously, her father is a complete deadpan character who has nothing to say about anything, a Casper milquetoast if ever there was one. He meanders through the house as though he's in a dream. He never stands up to the mother, and he's always meekly nodding his head to whatever she says. She'll have these ridiculous fits of rage where she'll order him out of the house because he came home too late from work, and then she'll make him sleep in his car. She has relegated him to another area of the house if she does let him sleep in the house because she doesn't want to sleep next to him. I mean, these enormous fits of rage over the smallest thing. So everyone's always scared of the mom. But then also, we've got the grandparents living with them. The grandparents moved in because the mother had cancer, and then they just never moved out. And the grandmother is equal to, if not in competition with the mother, for the most effusive emotional displays of insanity. So you have 2 wildly erratic emotional women. Then you have 2 husbands, the grandfather and the dad, who just try to get along with everybody, try not to ruffle any feathers. And then you have a series of brothers who are in and out of this chaotic mix. The house is too small for everybody, and nobody actually has anywhere appropriate to sleep. There's mattresses in the living room, and bedtime is kind of whenever. However, they're homeschooled, so there's not a lot of stability brought to life through a school schedule. And all the adults work a variety of different odd jobs. Her dad works at Home Depot sometimes, and then also at Hollywood Video as his second job. Her mother sometimes picks up shifts at Target during the holidays for a little extra money. Her grandfather's a ticket taker at Disneyland. So everybody is combining their small wages together to try to make this house run, but money is always in question. And Jeanette's mother is consistently griping at her husband for not being a better provider, for the fact that they're always late on the rent, for the fact that they are always living on the precipice of the lights being turned off. Everything is always tense. But to compound the emotional tension in this house, we have a mother who is insistent that everything be saved. She's an absolute hoarder. So along with the emotional clutter, the house is literally in disarray. You can't open certain doors. You can't go into the garage. You have to ferry your way through piles of trash. If you open a present on your birthday, you cannot tear the paper because all the paper must be saved because we must save this memory. If in a fit of rage, her mom breaks a mug on the counter, she will then collect the pieces because we don't want to forget the memory. The memory of what, lady? You losing it on your family? Like, what are you even talking about? Why would you want to save this? Anyway, nothing can be thrown away. So there's stacks of paper, bags of broken dishes, random knickknacks from various events, freebies that were given at Disneyland. It's like all of this junk and clutter because her mom is incredibly overly sentimental. And it could be because she was afraid of dying or something. And so now this sentimentality of like the preciousness of life and needing to like savor it all because she doesn't know when she's going to die because the whole family's got that looming over them, that she's got to save everything. You know, lest she die, you need to remember her presence. So just the vibe of the house is already really, really difficult to read about because it just fills you with so much dread. But the one consistency that is in her life is Jeanette's family's devotion at this time to the Mormon church. So they consistently go to church, and she really likes her Sunday school class, and she loves that there are 3 hours where she can be in a neat, clean building with organized activities and adults who don't seem to be off the rail. She's not sure how committed they are to the Mormon church because her mother was baptized as an 8-year-old and her grandmother was baptized as an 8-year-old, but church going hadn't been a big thing in the family until her mother got sick. And when she asked her mother, oh, so did we start going to church because we wanted something from God? Her mom gets really annoyed with her for asking, although she asked it genuinely, wondering why they suddenly had become devout members of the church. That will change as time goes on. But for this portion in her life, they're going to church, and Jeanette loves those 3 hours of the respite. And on Sunday mornings, she's constantly trying to get everyone out the door so they're not late for church because she doesn't want anything to cut into her 3 hours of peace at this other place. Now, about this time, when she's 6 years old, her mother tells her that she really wants Jeanette to get into acting. Jeanette's mother had always wanted to be an actress, but she harbors a lot of bitterness in her heart because her parents would not facilitate that goal. So she'd always been a big follower of what went on in Hollywood. They lived in California, not very far away from LA. So she'd always been right on the periphery of her dream and had never been able to accomplish it. So she's going to get Jeanette to do it for her. And this launches them into a whole series of struggles to get into the acting business. She has the kids sign up with an agency, and originally Jeanette is just a background actor. But then, after a series of fortunate events of her being noticed by different directors and her getting a couple of close-up shots, she moves up to not just being a background actor, but then being someone with principal work. She then goes on to scale up the ladder of getting better and better management. Now, in all of this, she's got bit parts on all kinds of TV shows, a lot of detective dramas and things like that. But there's always this pressure to perform, always this pressure that she never wanted. She isn't a very good actress at first. She's turned down by a couple of different managers initially because they find her delivery stilted and uncomfortable, because she is stilted and uncomfortable. This is not something she wanted to do. She has no desire to do this. But her mom's constantly pushing her, and along with constantly pushing her to increase her abilities to act, she has to go to a bunch of acting classes because her managers are like, unless she gets to be a better actress, there's nothing we can do with her. She goes to acting classes. She's got dance classes, like every single day of the week. She's got multiple dance classes, multiple acting classes. She's trying to build up her resume with a bunch of different skills that she can say that she has, because she didn't know how to use a pogo stick. So then her mom buys her a pogo stick and makes her practice until she can do 1,000 jumps on the pogo stick. So her entire life is devoted and dedicated to this acting goal, and her schooling seems to be something that is just not high priority for the family. They've got to get Jeanette on the big screen. At least that's what her mother feels. I don't think her dad cares about anything at all at any time. And her grandfather is kind of looking on, wringing his hands, feeling like, shouldn't we let Jeanette be a kid? But since none of the men in this house seem to have the gumption to speak up, and none of the women would even deign to listen if they did, it's just a continual pushing Jeanette forward. Just keep working at it, keep working at it. Now, Jeanette does have one skill when it comes to acting, is crying on cue. She knows how to act like she has completely lost her mind and then just cry and scream and sob as though she's really being tortured. And the people who see her do this cannot even believe it. Like, they're astounded at her realism in her freakouts. And that's because internally, she's really freaking out, and she would really like to be able to express herself in this way, but being able to act this way gives vent to a whole world of reality that she's never allowed to let her mom know she really feels. So being able to cry on cue is a major boon for her in the acting industry. Another thing that's really good for her is that she's small for her age. She takes after her mom. Her mom's only 4'11", so she's very small for her age. So as she gets older and older and more mature and capable of handling various roles, she doesn't look any older than her, 7-year-old co-stars. And so that's really helpful. But then she realizes one day that she might be developing as a young woman. And she freaks out not realizing what's going on because she doesn't know much about her body. Her mom has a desperate desire to infantilize her at every turn of the way, to such an extent that she insists on wiping Jeanette's bottom well into 10 years old. Like, she is way too old to have her mother doing her business for her, but her mother refuses to allow her to use the bathroom without coming to clean her up afterwards. Her mother bathes her until she is 17 years old. And during these bathing scenarios, Jeanette has learned to disassociate because her mother is doing these exams on her to make sure she's healthy, but I don't know what mother needs to do a breast and vaginal exam on a 17-year-old girl. If you've got concerns about the health of your daughter, take her to a professional. But every bath time you have to make sure she's healthy. Like, lady, that's nasty. And Jeanette has talked since writing the book, saying that those were memories that she'd really repressed, and that those were things that she had a really hard time coming to terms with, because as much as she tried to normalize or figure out why her mom would do that or put a positive spin on it, what positive spin can you put on that? But that's what I'm saying. Her mother was incredibly invasive of her space, acting as though as her mother, she needed to do certain things for her daughter that she simply did not need to do. But it was all to keep Jeanette under her control. So when Jeanette starts to notice that she's developing as a woman, her mom says, there's something we can do about this. And Jeanette has so internalized her mother's perception of her that she too wants to stay a child. The idea of becoming a woman, of being sexualized in any way, of being seen as a sexual object to anyone under any context disgusts her and will for years. And Jeanette McCurdy has curves. So you can imagine that somebody who absolutely despises the idea of having a body, realizing you have a body, is scary. So she decides that she's going to try to figure out a way to stay a child. And her mom rushes to her immediately as an 11-year-old and says, there's really nothing you have to worry about because Mama will help you fix this. What we're going to start working on is calorie restriction. Calorie restriction will help you maintain your little girl body. And that's what we want, right? So together, they decide to live on 1,000 calories a day. She and her mother become co-conspirators in her anorexia. And the mother has been anorexic for years, so she's only too happy to tell her daughter how it's done. Her mom for years would sleep in until 11 o'clock. Jeanette would come in with a cup of raspberry tea to wake up her mother, and that's what her mother would have until evening time, when for supper she would eat a plate of steamed vegetables with nothing on them. And that's the way her mother had lived for years. So she's only too happy to bring Jeanette into it. You and me, Jeanette, you and I, Mommy and you together, we're gonna tackle this thing together. So she ushers her into the world of tea for both breakfast and lunch, and then steamed vegetables. You can have some sugar-free popsicles and some applesauce sometimes, but we don't want you ever getting that icky, full feeling. That's yucky, isn't it? We don't want that feeling. No. And so her mother for years helps her to be an anorexic. Meanwhile, her career is, reaching new highs when finally she is given an opportunity to audition for a Nickelodeon show called iCarly, and she books the role. So this is really when her acting career is defined and she becomes a child star. The situation at iCarly and all of the jobs that led up to this have been incredibly stressful for Jeanette. This is not something that she has enjoyed at all, ever. But she keeps trying to believe this is good. And since her mom is happy, she's learned to substitute her mother's happiness for her own. But because she's been so stressed out for so long, she's beginning to crack mentally. And then you compound the fact that the poor child's getting no nutrition whatsoever. It's not surprising that she begins to display signs of OCD pretty aggressively. But she doesn't know what's happening to her because she doesn't have anybody to talk to. And up until she goes on to iCarly, her family has still been consistently attending the Mormon church. And when she was 8, which is about 2 years after she started acting, she is baptized into the church. And she'd been told at her baptism that the greatest gift she was going to get was the gift of the Holy Spirit upon her baptism. And everyone at the Mormon church has explained to her that she will hear the voice of the Holy Spirit. She's just got to listen. It's a still small voice, so she's got to really pay attention. But he will come and talk to her if she just lets herself be open to it. And so she's been waiting and waiting. And people keep asking her, have you heard from the Holy Spirit yet? And she hasn't yet. But she keeps being like, yeah, I just feel like it's between me and Holy Spirit, So I would tell you, but since it's a private conversation, I won't. But she retells in the book that had she even had a hint the Holy Spirit was telling her anything, she would have been screaming it from the mountaintops because that's what she'd been waiting for these many years. So one day she is at an audition and she's getting stressed out about it. She's feeling very nervous about how it's going to go. She feels like agitated because this is a part that she's struggling to embody, and her mom, of course, is breathing down her neck about it. And so as she's sitting there stressed out about it, she finally hears the Holy Spirit. So she feels in her spirit this voice tell her that she needs to get up, cross her name off of the call sheet, go to the bathroom, twirl around, touch her waistband 5 times, go into the bathroom, touch the floor, stand up, come back out, write her name back on the call sheet, and then she'd book the part. She then books the part. So it would appear to her that the Holy Spirit is onto something, and she just needs to do whatever he says. So she continues to follow these promptings in her spirit, and it requires her to do a lot of tapping and twitching and wiggling. She's constantly doing all sorts of rituals in order to appease the Holy Spirit so that she might continue to succeed in this life that she believes is ordained for her, especially because her mother only cares about her good, and this is something her mom wants her to do. Her grandfather notices this is going on and brings it up to her mother. I think that Jeanette has OCD. But Jeanette's mom, she doesn't have time to hear any of that. No. I don't even know what you're talking about. Jeanette's perfect. OCD, please. Stop with your weirdness. And so nobody ever addresses the fact that she is having a severe mental episode. But everyone just keeps wanting her to press on because she's doing so well. And she is doing so well. So she books iCarly. Around the same time that she books iCarly, they stop attending church because her mother's cancer didn't come back and Jeanette's doing great. So God's answered all their problems, and they decide that there's really no reason to pay him any tribute going to church, Because that's why you have a relationship with God. You just need him to do your stuff. And then once he Santa Claused his way into your life, you can just kind of let the dedication go. I'm not mocking her because I think a lot of people who are religious approach God in that same way. I think tons and tons and tons of people, even people who wouldn't say they're flippant about their faith, approach God as some kind of personal assistant who's supposed to help them get through their day. And I know I've also done that in various ways, feeling like, but God, I've done so many good things in this area. Don't you owe me over here? Even if I wouldn't articulate that, that's my stance and the way that I look at things. So I'm not belittling the family's struggle in this area. It was honestly a wake-up call, oh gosh, how many times, Lord, have I done that? Where I'm doing a certain thing, hoping that you'll notice to award me in a way that I deem fit for having served you in the way that I served you, So anyway, that's a side note. But as the family goes into her career with iCarly, they begin to shift some of their priorities at home, which had been, again, fairly loose, One thing that's positive for the family is that they actually have some money now. She's making a good bit of money. They still live in the same cramped, cluttered house, but she's been elevated from a mattress on the living room floor that they bought at Costco to getting an actual bunk bed in the room that was supposed to be her room. And so she's excited about that, except for her mom clutters up the top bunk with a bunch of junk. But at least she was able to buy herself an actual bed. Her stint at iCarly is full of mixed feelings. She does develop a great friendship with her co-star Miranda. And Miranda, in her estimation, is way cooler than her. Miranda has had a life in which there wasn't a lot of forced morality, so she just seems freer all around. And her first introduction to Miranda is when she receives a gift right outside her door at the beginning of the show. And the gift basket is full of what Jeanette considers to be like one of the coolest gifts you could get, which was a bunch of movie candy, Milk Duds, and stuff like that, along with $100 gift card to like this super fancy theater that she had never been able to go to because they couldn't afford to go to this theater. And so she, with her mother, decided to go and try to pick out a gift for Miranda. And she's embarrassed because her mother won't let her pick out something that she thinks is equal to the coolness of Miranda's gift. Like, Miranda gave her a $100 gift certificate. She didn't even know you could get gift certificates at that dollar amount. And so when her mom decides to gift Miranda a fuzzy panda bear and a furry journal, she just wants to melt through the floor. Like, it seems so uncool to her, and she's pretty sure Miranda's going to think it's uncool too. Like, Miranda's allowed to leave set and go get lunch by herself while she listens to music on her BlackBerry, and it's all songs that Jeanette's not allowed to listen to from the radio. So she feels like super cool Miranda is going to laugh in her face, and it's going to kill the friendship that could have been. But Miranda's gracious and thanks her for the gift anyway. And then they go on to be really good friends, which is nice. It's nice that for one time there's actually a light at the end of this dim tunnel, that there's something positive that can come off of this horrible set. Because, of course, you and I know that the creator of iCarly was Dan Schneider. And on this channel, we went through the entire show that was on Netflix about how terrible Dan Schneider was and the filth and foolishness that was going on at Nickelodeon at this time. She never actually names him. She never says Dan Schneider, but she always calls him the creator, and everybody knows who that is. So while she's trying to see her way through the filthy halls of Nickelodeon and trying to make her mark and say her words and do all the things she's supposed to say, she's also got to contend with this monster who is Dan Schneider. Also, while she's on this show, she has to have her first kiss. And she's like 17, I think, at the time. And she'd never kissed anybody before. And then she has to have her first kiss on camera, and she doesn't know what to do. She's not like one of those girls that's been like really interested and experimenting with boys. She's really uncomfortable with her body and herself. And she's definitely not looking to experiment with somebody else in any way. She does notice boys, and she does like think about like going on dates and stuff with boys and like them holding her hand, but she's not over there trying to get raunchy in her own mind. So to have to kiss this boy on set wasn't like she had a whole back pocket full of experience with which to pull. And it's really awkward, and they have to do 7 takes, and Dan is screaming at her that she's doing it all wrong, and she's like already super in her head about, I'm having my first kiss on camera and I'm doing it wrong, supposedly, but like, I don't know what he means when he tells me to keep moving my head more. Like, what am I just supposed to do this business while I lock lips with somebody? Like, what does this even mean? She's having all these thoughts like pouring through her head, like, ooh, I don't like the texture of this person's lips, and this is all just really weird, and I can't stand any of this. So it's like a series of her trying to be an adult on a set with other adults when really she's just an inexperienced kid who never had a childhood. And I heard her say in an interview one time, and I thought this is really interesting. She said, the problem with being a star when you're a child is that you are in an adult environment and have no ability to conduct yourself in an adult environment, but you don't know that about yourself. And I just think that what a crippling experience to be in an adult environment where you're expected to be an adult, but you never had any of the stepping stones to get there. How are you supposed to do that, you know? So the iCarly thing is hard, but it's also made harder when the writers go on strike. And so then she's got no work, but she's got her mom breathing down her neck about, you know, we got to keep you employed. So they decide to try to launch her a country music career. because she's got to do something. And that was sort of an avenue that a lot of child stars were taking to sort of distance themselves or give themselves a bit of a reprieve from their character on a show. So she tries to launch a country music career, but it kind of fizzles out because she's not really into it. Her mom's super into it for her. And her mom would have tried to keep her on the straight and narrow with a music career, but her mother's cancer diagnosis comes back. So that means that she can't travel with Jeanette anymore the way she used to do. And Jeanette's going on a tour for this album that she has. And it's when her mother is no longer able to attend to her at every turn of the way and has to go back home to receive treatments for her newly discovered cancer that Jeanette goes off the rails when it comes to maintaining her anorexic diet. No one's ever taught her how to eat. So there's no one here, but there's food everywhere. There's always been food everywhere her whole life. Like on every set, everything you could ever want to eat is always available to you at any time because the union has to feed you 3 hot meals a day. So there's food all the time, everywhere. And she, for once, is able to indulge without anybody telling her anything. But she doesn't know what to do with these feelings of fullness. And originally, she does attempt to throw it up because she'd heard about people doing that and, during a lapse of judgment and eating too much. So she tries that, but she's not able to throw up. So she's like, I guess I just have to make sure I'm a little bit more strict with herself. But she can't seem to stay strict. And she's gaining weight and she's getting really frustrated and scared because she knows after this tour is done, she's going to go back home and see her mom. And her mom is going to be horrified and grossed out by her. And what is she going to say? And her mom is going to be really mad at her. But she can't stop eating. She's just so hungry after years and years of starving herself to be able to eat whatever she wants, whenever she wants, however she wants to eat it, and how much. She can't stop wanting the food. Well, as she predicted, she flies home and meets her mother in the airport. Stunned is she by her mother's reality because her mother has completely lost her hair. She's frail. She's sick. She has cancer. Jeanette wasn't there to see the increasing frailty, so she's like slapped in the face with how her mom looks. Meanwhile, simultaneously, her mother is slapped in her face by what she perceives to be Jeanette's complete loss of sanity and has gained all this weight. So her mom's angry that Jeanette's fat, according to her definition of it. And she tells Jeanette, well, we've just got to get you back on track. I mean, what happened? Like, that's the first thing she says to Jeanette is, what happened? And you would think if it was you or I, we would be like so offended and saddened that the first thing our mom said after not seeing us all this time was, what happened? But Jeanette feels in some twisted way a relief that her mom says that because that means her mom's not too far gone. The first glimpse she gets of her mother is of this frail, sickly, cancer-stricken patient. And she feels that she's watching her mother deteriorate and die in front of her very eyes. So for her mom to rear up at her in indignation is like, oh, good, we're back to normal. Mom's fine. So that made her actually feel better. And we're going to see this happen actually like a number of times when she thinks her mom's like towards the brink of death and her mom comes rip-roaring back at her with some kind of heinous insult. She's comforted by the insults because that's the way her mom's been with her whole life. And of course, it's important to say that she and her mom had developed this kind of bond because her mom is incredibly codependent with her and doesn't know how to let Jeanette be her own person. And since Jeanette came up under that kind of codependency, Jeanette's developed codependency with her too and doesn't know how she's going to go on without her mom. So even though her mom will have like these outbursts of rage and call her like names and stuff sometimes, it's like Jeanette has figured out a way to just kind of make that okay because like there's other good times they have together, So she just tries not to let that upset her too much and usually puts it on herself and figures, well, I made mommy do that. It's my fault. If I hadn't done what I did, mommy wouldn't have had to get so mad at me. Dysfunctional and abusive to say the least. But they carry on life. Jeanette, for the first time in her life, is going to move out of the cluttered household and get her own apartment. And this is like huge for her. This is a really big step. Recall her mother's been bathing her and giving her health exams since childhood until the age of 17. So to finally get your own apartment and get out from underneath this is great. In fact, when she was away on tour, one of the things she loved the most was being able to shower alone. So to be able to now get your own apartment, she was really, really excited for that because while she was away the other thing she realized was, my mom's been in my business a lot. And I really need to figure out who I am without that, And she did feel that she was uncomfortable with her inability to figure out how to eat without her mom. That kind of scared her. But being able to talk to boys and not feel like her mom was in her ear, always telling her how dangerous men are. And also, you can't really have any female friends. They'll stab you in the back as fast as look at you. So she'd always been taught to distrust people, not have her mom there sort of organizing and playing chess with her friendships and relationships. She was able to decide, like, do I like that boy? No, I don't. So I won't go out with him again. But that was her decision. And now that she is at home and getting her own apartment, she's hopeful that she can carry on some of the things that she learned on tour in her real life, even though her mom lives in town. Don't dream too quick, Jeanette. So her mom insists that she come over and help Jeanette get settled. Okay, fine. That seems pretty typical. But once she's got Jeanette settled, she gives Jeanette a gift. And Jeanette says that at this time in her mom's life, she's gotten really sick with cancer. Her mom has started to do this thing where she will act overly like cutesy, but also innocent, but also like, don't hurt me, I'm sick kind of attitude. And Jeanette finds this very difficult to stand up to, even though she despises it. Like, she sees it fully for what it is. She knows it's a manipulative tactic, but she keeps trying to cope with it. And so when her mom is like, Jeanette, I got you a present. You want to open it? I got it for you. Jeanette opens the gift, and it's like this movie with a male actor that Jeanette knows her mom really likes, and has always tried to push on Jeanette, like, this is the guy we both like, right? And Jeanette's like, I guess for you. And she's like, I thought we could watch it together, like, since we put all your stuff away, like, we could just like have a mother-daughter night. Jeanette's like, yeah, sure, okay. But she knows full well that when the movie's over, her mom's going to want to spend the night, which she does. And then she proceeds to stay the night for like 3 months, never leaving. In the interim of all of this, iCarly has started back up, right? The writer's strike is over. She's back at work, and she has met a guy on set of this show named Joe. Joe is already actually with somebody else, and Joe's a good bit older than her. He's 30 and she's 20. And so there's a pretty big age gap there. But she sort of likes the idea that this older guy's into her, and he like flirts with her all the time. And like, it's that sort of heady phase where you sit next to each other and your hands brush up against each other, and it's like, oh my gosh, didn't mean to do that. Or, he'll cut his eyes over at you when somebody says something, and like you'll exchange a knowing look, and like you're both so amused that you get the inside joke. It's all that kind of stuff where you're so aware of each other in a room. So she's very much into Joe, even though Joe's with somebody else. But they've started going out and stuff on dates and lunches and things like that, even though he's with somebody else. And he's promised that he's going to break up with this other girl. Jeanette, even though she's been going out with this guy for a while, has not allowed herself to sleep with him. Also, he's with somebody else. So she knows that whatever they've got going on isn't exactly the way she would want it to be. If she were to write this out, like the dream scenario of meeting her first love, it's probably not the way she'd want it, but Joe's really cool and likes her a lot. And so he's the first guy she's ever really wanted to be with in any way. So if he could just sort out the girlfriend thing. Well, as her mother decides to stay on and on and on and on and on, and while she's trying to conduct this sort of secretive affair with Joe, she finally decides one night to tell her mom that she and her friend Miranda are going to have a sleepover, which they did a lot of the time. And her mom gets all upset, and she's like, I don't believe you. Something else is going on. And Jeanette just kind of steels herself for these fits that her mom often has, because she and Joe have decided that they're going to meet up at a hotel because Joe's going to break up with his girlfriend that night. And then he and Jeanette are going to spend the night together. Now, Jeanette's not into sleeping with him, but she wants to spend time with him. And they can't come back to her house. And I think Joe lived with the girlfriend, so they're going to have to get a hotel room. Jeanette's mom's read on the situation isn't exactly wrong. She's not going to go meet up with Miranda, but she insists that she's being lied to, and then starts calling Jeanette abusive names, screaming and hollering and carrying on. Present for all of this is Jeanette's dad, who just stands there like an absolute mannequin in the corner, having nothing to say as his wife screams hate and abuse at her daughter. But Jeanette just is like absorbs it and then leaves. Joe comes to pick her up. Joe is drunk off his literal ass. He smells like throw up and puke and alcohol, and this isn't exactly the way Jeanette had envisioned their reunion after he finally broke up with his girlfriend, who he said that he wanted to break up with for Jeanette's sake. But he's drunk himself into a stupor. So upset is he over breaking up with the other girl. It's like, don't do me any favors, you know? Like, if you got to get drunk in order to do it, then you're going to cry all over my neck about how much you love this other person. I mean, what are you even here for? But Jeanette doesn't say any of that to him. She kind of just tries to absorb the fact that, well, he wasn't a meaningful relationship with that other girl, so probably it was hard for him to break it off. And so he's lying on the bed, like sobbing and being like, what did I do? What did I do? And you're just so young. And I just, you know, I don't even know what I just did. And then he turns to her and says, but could I just get like a little sex? Like maybe we could just have sex because you haven't had sex with me like this whole time, you know? Could we at least do that? And Jeanette's like, I'm not going to do that with you. Because at this point, even though most of the vestiges of her Mormonism had fallen away, she still didn't want to have sex before marriage. Well, he gets like super agitated with her. And then he's like, well, could I at least get a blowjob? What? Here you are, drunk off your ass, crying about another girl. You want to have sex with me, and then when I don't do that, but you owe me at least a blowjob. So then she does, even though she's never done it before. And the poor girl, it's just like, gosh, the sickness of it, the perversion of a man thinking he can ask for something so vile. I mean, you know what I'm saying? How do you sit there and say to me, oh, well, you won't have sex with me, but you at least owe me a blowjob? I don't owe you shit. What are you talking about? I owe you that act? I mean, what? Anyway, she does it, and no one's ever explained to her anything about anatomy or what happens when a person comes who's a man, and so she's, like, shocked by what she is absorbing, and she freaks out, and she's like, what is that? And then he's like, tells her and is disgusted and annoyed that he's got to have to educate her about the way things really are in the world and about, you know, what happens. And, you know, it's like the most depressing story of all time. Of course, she tells it in a really hilarious way that you can absorb it. And the whole book is really funny. I mean, the whole book is really dark, but she definitely tells it in a way that doesn't diminish, like, the ridiculousness of the scenario and the absurdity of the abuse that's happening. But at the same time, like, you're able to cope with what you're reading. It's really masterfully written, I have to say. There's a big part of me that's like, man, I wish I would have read that book on this channel. That would have been a fun book to read because it's very funny. But anyway, she continues to go out with Joe, continue to hide it from her mother. But then it all comes to light when she is given a gift, like a wrap gift by the studio for several days in Hawaii, and she's allowed to bring a guest. Of course, she brings Joe. Well, she tries to cover for what she's done by pretending to her mom that she brought her gay best friend Colton with her because her mom doesn't care if she's friends with a gay guy. But, you know, just don't be friends with any straight men because they'll screw you over as fast as look at you. And so she and Colton are trying to, like, tag team the mom and confuse the mom about where she is or not necessarily where she is, but who she's there with. And so she would have pulled it off, except for the fact that TMZ gets a series of photographs of her on the beach with this guy, and then they publish it. And this is in the very beginning days of TMZ. But her mom finds these photographs and is livid. And she had in this relationship with Joe, and because she's living on her own, again, begun binge eating and having an unhealthy relationship with food. So she's heavier in these pictures than she was comfortable being. I went and looked at those pictures. I'm like, I wish that was my version of being fat. You know, she looks fine. But having been pencil thin and having a mom who is completely obsessed with weight, like the two of them freak out about how unfortunate she looks in these pictures, according to their definition of what fortunate looks like. And simultaneously, her mother is irate at her and calls her a series of names, slut and whore and all of this, because she's there on this trip with a man. By the end of this story, you're going to be really shocked that her mom even had breath to say the things she did about her behavior with men. But anyway, we'll get there. So as you can imagine, this is just going to send her into a spiral where she feels that she has got to figure out how to lose this weight. That without her mother breathing down her neck, the anorexia is too hard to maintain, but she can't throw up, She's tried that. Well, she decides she's going to have to try harder. And she does. And then she discovers throwing up and purging. And that is going to send her into another ridiculous spiral where she feels continually this need to eat when she's upset, but then there's this need to throw up. And after she throws up, she gets this feeling like there's an adrenaline rush with the throwing up, but then also this utter exhaustion that makes it hard for her to even care about anything. So she's having all these chemical imbalances coincide with the fact that she's not getting enough to eat. So as you can imagine, that's playing with her head a considerable bit. In all of this, she is ending her show on iCarly, but then there's going to be a spin-off series. Now, originally, she'd been told that the spin-off series was supposed to be one with just her character, and it was going to be called Just Puckett, because her name in the iCarly series was Sam Puckett, and so now it was going to be Just Puckett. But when she was told about the spin-off series, she had been told by the creator of these shows that he was writing one for her, and he tells this whole tale to her over dinner, in which he encourages her to have alcohol with him, even though she was underage. She was only 18 at the time. And during that dinner, he's like massaging her leg and touching her and things like that, making her incredibly uncomfortable. It was a very manipulative conversation where he kept hinting to her that she was really special talent and that, he had been noticing her for a long time and really wanted to do this for her because he thought that she had the chops to do it. And, building her up on one side, but then tearing her down on the other, being like, look, if you don't want to do this, there's like plenty of other people I could work with. I mean, it's like, don't come to the conclusion that like I'm hanging all my hopes on you, because nothing could be farther from the truth. So it's like, it was a super confusing conversation, but she'd been told there was going to be the spinoff of a show for her in which her character plays a more mature version of who she's been. And so she was excited about some more mature acting. In the show, she was going to end up being like a high school counselor to help kids or whatever. But then in the end, she ends up having to do a spinoff show called Sam and Cat, where she is with Ariana Grande, and the two of them are doing some kind of babysitting company, and, chaos ensues. So she was really unhappy about doing this clunky little spin-off in the first place, but it was work. And then she was also just discouraged about the fact that she'd been told it was going to be better writing, and then it turned out to be even more ridiculous than iCarly had been. So it was a hard sell, but she did it anyway. She ends up thinking that maybe one of the things she can do to sort of make this whole experience more exciting is that she will direct one of the episodes. And she'd been told when this started, since they didn't give her own spinoff and she was going to have to do this like co-spinoff with Ariana Grande, that she would be allowed to direct. And that was kind of their sell for her, But then when it finally came time for her to direct her episodes, suddenly they took that away from her. And the reasoning was, after she pressed to find out, she was told in the vaguest of terms that there was somebody on that set who was going to leave the show if she directed. Well, that someone was probably Ariana Grande, because their relationship had been pretty poor the whole time. Ariana was trying to become a pop star, and she really was only using Nickelodeon as a paycheck until she could do what she wanted. And Nickelodeon knew that having a star as big as Ariana was good for them, so they kept pushing her pop star status. But that meant that Jeanette was having to hold down the fort all the time because Ariana just kept leaving. And there would be times when the excuse for where Ariana was that she was locked in a box, and that her character was inside this box, and then Jeanette had to act against the box for multiple episodes. And it was just a continual stream of excuses why Ariana could just not go to work, whereas Jeanette was always having to hold down the fort, and she was always being congratulated as, being a good sport. So when the show was finally canceled, she wasn't even one bit sad, because they lied to her about giving her a chance to direct some episodes, and she had to deal with Ariana, who never showed up for work. And Ariana just sounds like a general, nuisance. She was constantly bragging about the experience that she had. And I think that for Jeanette, too, she writes about it pretty extensively in the book. even though she knew she shouldn't, she was constantly comparing her life to Ariana, who'd had a much more privileged life with stable parents and had always had money her whole life, so her paycheck wasn't as mandatory for the family's existence as Jeanette's had been. So there was this always comparing. And then when Ariana had a chance to actually hobnob with celebrities who Jeanette thought were pretty cool, it all became like, why am I over here slaving when you're just dilly-dallying amongst the world doing all the fun things and I have to just keep coming over here being a good sport? So when Sam and Cat finally ended, it was like good riddance, you know. The show sort of petered out because of drama at Nickelodeon. And they even offered her $300,000 to keep her mouth shut and never talk about the creator, which she did not accept because it's like, that sounds like hush money to me, so no thank you. And so that's why she could freely write about her experiences at Nickelodeon. But after that, you know, it's like, okay, well, what are we going to do with your career? Because as a child star, it's very difficult to figure out what to do next with a person like that, you know. So she'd been promised through her managers that they would get her this work at Netflix, and it was going to film in Canada. But when she got there, she found out that it wasn't actually a Netflix show. There was this Canadian production company that was making a show, and then Netflix was going to carry the show. So it wasn't exactly a Netflix deal, but she didn't realize that when she signed the papers. Well, while she's there, she meets who will end up being a huge part of her life, this guy named Steven. And she thinks that he's the best and they get along super well. And he's like the absolute love of her life at this point. And they just really work together. Like they just mesh really well. The things he thinks are important are the things she thinks are important, and they just see the world exactly right, and they just love hanging out with each other. So even though the film experience and the show was a disappointment, she was super happy to be in Toronto because Steven was so awesome. And when she had to fly back home, because the show was over, she was really sad because she was going to be sad to miss Steven. And when he comes back into her life and eventually comes and lives with her in LA, their relationship begins to rapidly deteriorate because he suddenly says he wants to start going to church, but then there's like this whole schizophrenic episode that happens where he thinks he's Jesus Christ. Then he goes to institution. When he gets back out, he's super addicted to marijuana, doesn't want to do anything all day. So it becomes this really difficult relationship because he's very, very sick. She's got a lot of her own problems. Steven had wanted her to deal with her bulimia and told her, I can't keep being in a relationship with you while you're bulimic, but he'd said that when he was well. Now he's the sick one. She's trying to get on a path of wellness, and both of them are battling to figure out how to be each other's savior, but neither of them are happy in the relationship. Like the fun drained a long time ago, but they're both locked into this new codependent relationship. Through all of this, her mother is dying, and finally her mother does die, but not after about 1 billion episodes of thinking, oh, this is it, and then her mother lives on. And she's left trying to figure out, like, who am I now? She goes to a variety of therapists to try to help her figure out what's going on. But when they finally get around to the idea that her mom had something to do with her problems, she dismisses therapy altogether because that can't be it. And she's really annoyed and offended by the very idea that therapists are always trying to blame your parents. It's like, hello, no. You know, so she really is aggressively against anybody suggesting that her mom had something to do with her current mental and emotional unwell. There's a point in the book where her mother has passed away. Her bulimia is raging so badly that she's throwing her literal teeth up. Her boyfriend has been diagnosed with schizophrenia and thinks he's Jesus Christ. Her father comes to her and says, hi, I just wanted to let you know I'm dating your mom's best friend, but she wants me to tell you that I'm not actually your real dad. And it comes to light that her mother had been sleeping with some local trumpet player and that Jeanette and 2 of her brothers were really fathered by the trumpet player. How do you even go on when that is your current existence? How? I mean, like, the book was wild. But I love the way she writes humorously, but so emotionally honestly about everything that happens from when she's a little kid, acting, then eventually giving up acting when, you know, it looks like there's not much coming in for her to do, and she decides, you know what, I don't even want to pursue any of this. This was never my dream. This was my mom's dream. I want to be a writer. And when she told her mom she wanted to be a writer as a young girl, her mom completely steamrolled the idea and was like, you absolutely don't want to do that. And so she'd never been able to develop that side of herself. But she realizes, why am I still acting? I don't want to do that. Why am I not writing? That's what I wanted to do. You know, if my mother had still been alive, I'd probably be dead because the anorexia would have killed me. It's like this amazing journey towards realizing that the person she loved and respected the most had lied to her whole life, and she was going to have to figure out how to be an adult with an entire past that was based on a series of lies and projections for what her reality should be instead of what her reality really was. That she was a young child that was forced into acting. And she'd grown up with a person who had emotionally abused her, physically abused her, and here she was trying to lay on that person all this love and dedication, even after the woman had died, and the woman had not deserved any of that in her real life. And she was still, even after her mother died, trying to live the life that her mother had propped her up to live, and just coming to the realization that, no, I need to be my own person. And it is right that I look at my past in the face and confront all the things that happened to me. But she's like very, very emotionally honest about it. Where she personally was in her journey, where she misjudged people, where she was angry and bitter, because she was angry and bitter for years at playing the character of Sam Puckett. She didn't want to do that. She thought it was a dumb role. She felt dumb doing it, and she hated that fans would always come rushing up to her, acting like she owed them something. So she's so honest about her own emotional pitfalls, but also so honest about the things that her mother did and said to her. It was the perfect melding of both sides to make you feel like you had just read somebody's true story. And I say this all the time about memoirs. If you are not willing to be honest, don't waste your breath. Don't waste the time telling your story, because people can immediately tell when you're lying. If you're unwilling to be honest about your side of things, don't tell the story. And if you can't deal with the things that your family members did to you, you still want to protect them, don't tell the story. You're just not ready to do it. And that's okay. Maybe a time will come. But don't tell your story yet if you can't tell it. Well, she was ready to tell her story, and it was a fabulous read. I would highly recommend. I think probably a lot of you have, because this is late in coming out to you guys. It's not like she just wrote the book. It's 2 years old. But Apple has taken this, and they're going to be doing a series. Jennifer Aniston has signed to be the mother in the series. It's going to be like a 10-episode thing. So they haven't released any more information. Maybe it'll never be made. But this book is still relevant enough that they're wanting to do a whole series on this book. So I am really happy that I read it. It was actually really nice to read something, especially because I read so many bad celebrity memoirs, so to actually read one that was really good and well written and very funny. It was such a relief. I highly recommend. This would be a book to own and put in your memoir collection. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I will see you guys soon. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.